Dogs are extraordinarily good at hiding pain, not because they are trying to deceive you, but because of deep evolutionary wiring that makes vulnerability dangerous. In the wild, a visibly injured animal is a target, so the instinct to mask pain, to keep moving, keep functioning, keep appearing normal, is built into their biology, which means the dog lying quietly on their bed, the dog still eating, the dog still wagging their tail when you walk in, that dog could be in genuine, significant pain right now, and you would have no idea unless you knew exactly what to look for. Today we are going through 8 signs of hidden pain that most owners miss entirely. Not the obvious limp or the yelp, the quiet ones. The ones that get dismissed as aging, mood, or personality for months before anyone connects them to something physical. 1. Subtle changes in how they sit or lie down. Watch how your dog gets into a resting position, not just whether they do it. A dog in pain, particularly joint or spinal pain, often changes the mechanics of how they lower themselves to the ground. They may lower the front half of their body first and pause before bringing the back legs down, rather than lowering smoothly in one motion. They may avoid fully extending a leg during the process, holding it tucked rather than stretched. Veterinary behaviorists who study pain recognition in dogs note that these compensatory movement patterns develop specifically because the direct, normal movement causes discomfort. The dog has unconsciously found a modified way to accomplish the same task while avoiding the part of the motion that hurts. This is easy to miss because the end result looks the same. The dog ends up lying down either way. It is the process, not the outcome, that carries the information. Watch a few times in a row. If the pattern is consistently modified compared to how they used to do it, that consistency is the signal. A single, awkward sit means nothing. The same awkward sit, every single time, for weeks, means something. 2. Decreased interest in things they used to love. A sudden or gradual decline in enthusiasm for activities that previously produced excitement. The toy that no longer gets chased with the same energy, the walk that no longer produces the same eagerness at the door, the game that ends sooner than it used to, is one of the most consistently underrated indicators of chronic pain in dogs. Owners frequently attribute this to aging or changing personality. Sometimes that is accurate, but pain reduces motivation to engage in physical activity in a way that mimics the behavioral profile of normal aging closely enough that the two are easy to confuse. The distinguishing factor is the rate and pattern of the change. Normal aging tends to be gradual and global, a slow, even decline across all activity types over a long period. Pain-driven disengagement is often more specific and can develop faster, particular movements or particular activities becoming avoided while others remain unaffected, or a decline that happens over weeks rather than years. A dog that still has bright eyes and engagement in calm settings, but has clearly lost interest specifically in physically demanding activities is worth a closer look. The selectivity of the decline is the clue. Aging rarely picks favorites. Pain almost always does. 3. Increased clinginess, or the opposite, withdrawal. Pain changes a dog's social behavior, but not in a single predictable direction. Some dogs become more clingy when in pain, seeking proximity to their attachment figure as a source of comfort and security during a vulnerable period. Others withdraw, isolating themselves in quiet spaces away from household activity. Both patterns are documented responses to chronic discomfort, and which one a given dog displays depends on individual temperament and the specific nature of their pain. What both patterns share is a deviation from that dog's individual baseline. A normally independent dog suddenly seeking constant contact is worth noting. A normally social dog suddenly avoiding the family and retreating to isolated spaces is equally worth noting. The direction of the change matters less than the fact that a change has occurred at all, and that the change is sustained rather than a one-off mood tied to something obvious like a thunderstorm or a stressful visitor. 4. Changes in facial expression. This is one of the more recently validated indicators in veterinary pain research, and it requires owners to look more closely at their dog's face than most ever do. Researchers have developed standardized canine pain facial expression scales, similar in concept to pain scales developed for human infants who cannot verbally communicate discomfort. These scales identify specific facial changes associated with pain. A tightening around the eyes, ears pulled back and held in a lower position than normal, tension in the muscles around the mouth, a slightly furrowed or tense appearance in the forehead. These changes are subtle enough that they are easy to miss in a quick glance, but become clearly visible once you know what you are looking for and compare it to photos or your memory of your dog's relaxed and pain-free expression. Take note of what your dog's face looks like when they are genuinely comfortable and content. That baseline becomes the reference point against which subtle, sustained changes become much easier to detect. A few photos taken on an ordinary good day are more useful for this comparison than memory alone. 5. Reduced grooming or over-grooming. A specific area. Dogs in pain often show changes in self-grooming behavior, and the change can move in either direction, depending on the source of the discomfort. A dog with general systemic pain or illness may groom themselves less overall. A decline in the normal self-care behaviors like licking their paws, clean, or maintaining their coat. This decline reflects reduced overall energy and motivation, similar to reduced grooming behavior observed in humans during illness or depression. Conversely, a dog with localized pain, a sore joint, an irritated area, an internal source of discomfort that refers sensation to a specific external location may overgroom that specific area. Persistent licking at one paw, one joint, or one section of the body, especially when it has become a focused, repetitive behavior rather than normal occasional grooming, often indicates the dog is responding to pain or irritation in that specific location. Either pattern, a global decline or a focused, repetitive fixation on one area, is worth investigating rather than dismissing as a behavioral quirk. 6. Changes in appetite or eating behavior. Pain suppresses appetite in dogs through the same physiological stress response mechanisms that suppress appetite in humans experiencing significant discomfort. But the changes are not always a dramatic refusal to eat. Often they are subtler. Eating more slowly than usual, taking longer breaks during a meal, approaching the food bowl with less enthusiasm, or showing reluctance to chew on one side of the mouth, which can indicate dental pain specifically rather than general illness. Dogs with oral or dental pain sometimes shift to swallowing food with minimal chewing, or favor soft food over kibble in a way that represents a clear change from their previous preference. This is frequently mistaken for pickiness when it is in fact an adaptive response to pain that occurs during the act of chewing itself. Any sustained change in the speed, enthusiasm, or mechanics of how your dog eats deserves attention rather than assumption. 7. Restlessness or difficulty. Settling, especially at night. A dog that used to settle easily and now paces, repositions frequently, or struggles to find a comfortable resting position, particularly at night when there are no distractions to explain the restlessness, is often communicating discomfort that has no other obvious outlet. Pain frequently disrupts the ability to find and maintain a comfortable position for extended rest. A dog that gets up and down repeatedly, that circles multiple times before lying down and then gets up again shortly after, that seems unable to settle into the kind of deep, still rest they used to achieve easily, may be dealing with discomfort that interferes with their ability to fully relax. This pattern is sometimes mistaken for anxiety or behavioral restlessness, and while anxiety can certainly produce similar surface behavior, a dog whose restlessness is new, sustained, and not clearly tied to any environmental or emotional trigger deserves consideration of a physical cause before being treated purely as a behavioral issue. 8. Subtle changes in gait or weight distribution. This is the sign most owners associate with obvious limping, but the early hidden version is far more subtle than a limp. Before an outright limp develops, many dogs show a slight asymmetry in how they distribute their weight while standing or walking. This might look like a very slightly shortened stride on one side, a faint head bob that corresponds with weight bearing on a particular leg, or simply standing with weight shifted subtly away from one limb when at rest. Veterinary professionals trained in gait assessment are taught to look for these asymmetries, specifically because they often precede the development of a visible limp by weeks or months. By the time a limp is obvious to an untrained eye, the underlying issue has often been developing for a meaningful period of time already. Watching your dog walk on a flat, even surface from directly behind and from the side, actually watching, not just glancing, can reveal asymmetries that are otherwise easy to miss during normal day-to-day interaction. None of these signs alone are proof of pain, but a cluster of them, especially when they represent a change from your dog's normal baseline, is information worth taking to a veterinarian rather than waiting on. Your dog cannot tell you directly. This is them trying anyway. Drop a comment. I read every single one. Subscribe. New video every week. See you next time.